I don't have strong opinions on the AI related topics that I put in. I just thought both were kind of neat, but I've had general concerns, questions, qualms, thought processes related to the consumption or enjoyment of media or things when there is a ethical concern with those things creator or primary holder of uh, domain, all that kind of related tangent.
No, I've been really. This has
So
been on my
I think
mind.
that makes a good follow up and breaks the tech cycle briefly. Uh,
Yeah.
so I guess with that lead in, the one thing that I'll mention tech related, because I thought this was interesting when I saw it, was that you can use ChatGPT via CarPlay apparently with 26.4.
I saw that as well. I
I
haven't
haven't
tried it, but I
either.
saw
I
that.
find it hilarious, and I find it hilarious because why the hell would I want to be driving and talk to an LLM? And I say that somewhat tongue in cheek because I absolutely could see it being conversational Q&A bouncing ideas off of, maybe in the long run, if its responses weren't so uh, almost pandering, if you will.
Yeah, and also it also sometimes feels like sometimes I when I um so I've actually never used the audio feature in ChatGPT, but sometimes like I know it's there and I know that I can, but I have this idea in my head that it's going to end up feeling like the architect and talking to the architect in the Matrix. Maybe if I could actually get that voice, I might do it.
That might be, I don't know. It's just, yeah.
Just to be funny.
There's enough about it that I find intriguing and also somewhat humorous, and so we'll see where it goes. But that's the only thing I wanted to mention about it, just because I did find it kind of funny.
Well, it makes me think. It reminded me because I've meant to say this a couple of times, but I actually had Siri do something useful. I was in the car with my younger son, and we were listening to some music, and there was there's a Dropkick Murphys song that he likes, and I was like, oh, you should hear this other one. And it was I don't know, I couldn't remember the name of the song, but I knew that it was on the soundtrack for Fever Pitch. And I said, hey Siri, play that Dropkick Murphys song from the Fever Pitch soundtrack. And it played the correct song. She played the correct song, but it wasn't off of the actual soundtrack. But they found out, they found the correct song from the soundtrack and played it. And I was like, wow, I can't believe it actually got that. That, and also when I tell Siri to play Enter Sandman, I have to tell them play Enter Sandman, the not S&M version, because for whatever reason they picked the S&M version instead of the Black Album version. Anyway, that was all I had to say about that.
Yeah, the 1 time out of 10 that it works appropriately, I suppose.
Yeah. Is it that much?
Yeah,
It's pretty generous.
I don't try it often enough. So the handful of things that I do use it for work for me, which are setting timers and identifying music playing when I'm walking with AirPods. So I could ask, what's that song, and I get the identification of what's playing. But that's pretty much the only other thing I use it for.
I was going to watch Harry Potter, but now I'm not. There was no segue.
Well,
here.
there was a segue because it was referenced earlier. So,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yes, this has been something that's been on my mind, and it's been on my mind for a couple of different reasons. So, I'm certain you heard of the passing of Chuck Norris last week as we record.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Which, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts on. Obviously, I grew up enjoying a lot of the stuff that he was in, and him being a prolific martial artist led to a certain appeal in general. But I also had a lot of problems with a number of his publicly stated stances and outspoken, critiques of things. And so the thought process has been something that's been there off and on anyway over the years, especially as you get older and start to pay attention to what people say or what artists say or things of that nature. And you can make a case that for everybody, especially in the public sphere, if you're doing something like that, that people don't care about your opinions. But the fact is they do. It's just the nature of being influential in some regard. And so the Harry Potter stuff has always been something that I've been concerned about supporting because of the outspoken bigotry of J.K. Rowling, which kind of leads in a nutshell to what we were talking about in general. But I wanted to reference both of those things because it's similar. It is enjoying the works of a person in some fashion, but not enjoying the person and wondering where that line is drawn on whether there is a way to continue to enjoy those works. Excuse me. On whether there is a way to continue to enjoy those works, or if it's just purely unethical and cannot be done without somewhat endorsing those behaviors.
Yeah, so I think this. If anybody who wants to go and watch the new Harry Potter series, I'm not going to pass judgment on them. I think enjoying somebody's art does not mean that you condone any of their positions. Now, even if their art has something in them that because I can't think of anything in Harry Potter that's transphobic. It just simply doesn't exist there. And now somebody might be able to point it out, and if they do, then okay, then there is. And to me, I think you can still watch it if you want to point it out as like a talking point. This is not okay. Or if it's like, for some people, the response is going to be, they're just, I can't in good faith watch any of this at all until she's dead. So I might circle back and watch it after she passes away.
Yeah, I know that the big concern, especially with Rowling, is that she has made it a point to be clear that she will use her amassed fortune to continue to attack the trans community in general. And I don't have all the details in front of me, but that was part of why this particular line or article that I'm talking about from The Verge popped up and kind of rekindled some of those thoughts, because there is a difference between Rowling's behavior and, since I used Chuck Norris as the example leading into it, and his behavior, where I don't recall him going out and making it a crusade to attack other groups. He was just very clear on his opinions and stances when asked. And I think there's definitely a difference there.
I'd agree. For me, the thing that the thing that kind of just, the one that's really where I have had to make a decision, and that is about the World Cup this year. It's in the United States, and I've not sought out any tickets because FIFA is such a horrible organization. They do such a corrupt organization, and I can thank John Oliver for bringing that to my attention. But it's something I expect that I'll watch it. But I 4 years ago I had a very difficult time watching the World Cup because of this, and I only watched the final match.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't paid as much attention to the World Cup in a while, and it was unrelated to FIFA, but learning more about FIFA certainly kept me from rekindling an interest, I guess, in following. So I loosely pay attention, and I certainly will catch highlights of certain matches of interest. I don't know that I'll sit and watch any of the actual games. We'll see. But it is a good example, especially in this case, where FIFA's ass kissing to this administration doesn't help its case. and sours me on any support of the organization, even if I enjoy the game.
See, I don't see FIFA as just ass kissing this administration. I think that's just they're going to ass kiss.
Oh, I agree. I'm certainly
whatsoever.
not
Like
limiting it to this one. It's just that was an extra level of added annoyance.
You just particularly dislike this
Yes,
administration.
and I particularly really dislike the way in which FIFA decided to suck up to this administration.
Yeah. No, I
and so that already made it difficult to care. But you combine that with the already exposed kind of horrific nature of FIFA in general from the Oliver piece that you referenced, and it's just, why even bother? Is kind of where I landed on it. So
UEFA's no better, and I imagine I know less about the FA in England and MLS and any of the leagues, and I would expect the same.
Yeah, I would hope that because it's not as well established, that MLS is maybe a little bit better, but because it's here, I wouldn't expect so. And that's kind of it's a negative way of looking at it, but I mean,
at this point, you can look at any organization like this in sports and say, how much are they paying the women? How much less are they paying the women than the men? And be like, okay, it's almost always going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's fair. I was debating whether I had any kind of response to it, and I don't, because I was thinking through just exposure to the MLS's influence into youth development and youth teams, and yes, there's not really a divide at that age group, but that doesn't mean anything, because as far as the way things are presented from an academy perspective and all, up until it's a pay-to-play game, or I guess maybe if you went into the competitive leagues in the youth, it might feel different as well. But rec-wise, the MLS influence is low enough or detached enough that it's pretty strong recommendations on like coaching methodology, but nothing that's required. And that's really the only thing that I've seen from them in general, which is just a long-winded way of saying that, I guess that's part of what probably fuels my some level of hope that maybe MLS is a little bit better, but I sincerely doubt it.
I don't think that I don't think that
I know they're no better overall at the professional level.
Yeah, I know U.S. soccer is not. So it's I think one of the first cases where I thought about this was Michael Jackson, and then Bill Cosby. And I've heard some interesting things about Michael Jackson recently, about how some of the allegations of of having children over at Neverland Ranch was not exactly what it was, but or not exactly true. I know that Macaulay Culkin has come out and said that he was that he was protected from his parents when he was over at Neverland Ranch, and that's interesting. But anyway, if you believe the allegations, was it okay? The first times I started thinking about this, was it okay to continue to listen to Michael Jackson, and is it okay to watch the Cosby Show? And I just, again, for people who do, I pass no judgment. It's a tricky thing, and I think that like you were saying with J.K. Rowling, it's like that one feels a lot more difficult because of her position on saying, I will use the money that I make to harm these people.
Yeah, it's
sorry, I think I just reset everything you just said.
It's fine. The thing that always comes to mind, and part of I think why I struggle so much with this concept as well, is just thinking about the nature of boycotts, just the conceptual nature of a boycott, and how in the United States we love to talk about it for a bunch of different reasons, and about how we should boycott this or that retail outlet because of its support of one or another political movement or ideology or group or whatever else. We draw plenty of lines to talk about boycotting things. And I've never seen a boycott work. Not saying that it didn't have an effect at all, but I've never actually seen it work to the extent that I've never seen a group decide to boycott another group and that first group ceases to exist or completely changes to cave to the desires of the group boycotting it, or I guess is the way you would phrase it. I've seen real limited impact where maybe a policy gets put in place or something to that nature, which you could say is positive, and I'm not necessarily going to say it's not, but that's the kind of thing that you do to appease a group. So to me, that's borderline. You're talking the talk, but that doesn't mean that you're doing anything. And yes, that's also a pessimistic view, but that's just the reality of a capitalist market, where especially a corporation who is attempting to sell goods is going to do what they can to appease people vocally without necessarily changing anything behaviorally.
Right.
And so if I see a change behaviorally, that's a whole different thing, but that's what I've not seen. And so if boycotts don't work, then an individual choice to not consume media doesn't really work either. It's the same principle, same idea. So unless it's organized on a large scale, you have essentially no impact. But if you're organizing on a large scale, then you're not worried about your individual consumption of something. You know, that's the dissonance in thought that occurs with these types of things for me.
I am trying to think of, like, I have thoughts, but I'm having a difficult time articulating them because it feels very circular.
Yeah. Well, and I do think this is part of why, for me, it feels more important to vocalize things to state a position than it does to, like, boycott a thing or no longer watch that actor's things or no longer listen to this artist. Going on record and providing a position and attempting to provide influence or support or whatever else, however limited it might be, at least feels like an action that could move the needle, where me choosing not to watch the new Harry Potter is not going to matter one way or another if anybody else chooses to watch, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of...
or just to give a different example, choosing to boycott Target, if, you know, like another one of the more recent things is...
Yeah, I was thinking about that one, actually, when you mentioned... But wasn't that one a little more successful?
I never heard of anything that was successful or unsuccessful, so I don't actually know enough details about it to know for sure.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you would define success, but I still think corporations are going to cooperate. Yeah. I can remember in the early 90s, the Southern Baptist Convention calling for a boycott of Levi's and Dockers, as well as Disney. Didn't do a thing. Did not do a thing.
I vaguely remember this. I do not remember the rationale, but I vaguely remember this.
Oh, it was because both of those companies were supporting gay rights, and the Southern Baptist Church viewed that as anti-family.
It's really no different from the way current arguments play out either, then.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of thought I would have more to say about it, but I still have no clarity. I still have the whole... It just doesn't feel like it does anything. Now, is it going to change my view of trying to watch, like, the new Harry Potter series? Yeah. I don't know whether I'll watch it anytime soon or if I'll potentially wait until Rowling's passing. I guess a lot of it will depend on just general interest and feedback from people. I don't know.
Yeah, the other part of it is, it's like, how many... Because I've always thought boycotts were difficult to really be... I always thought boycotts were difficult because it's like, well, how many places should you, like, really and truly, you probably need to boycott everything.
I mean, if you're not directly responsible for its production, someone is getting exploited to produce it. Yeah. It's kind of the unfortunate reality of
And that sort of takes us like, is the janitor on the Death Star evil and culpable for the destruction of the civilization on Alderaan? Or is he just stuck in a system that makes him...
Every time that example is used, I agree, but I always want to say, what about the janitor at Auschwitz? Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
Just because it's more taboo, I guess, to reference. Like, it
It hits closer to home, and it's like, is this example just a way for us to rationalize and make us feel better about our lives? These are the things I think.
Everything is a rationalization to make us feel better about our lives.
Well, thank you, Jeff Goldblum's character from The Big Chill. I can't remember his character's name.
I can't either. I know you're talking about, but I can't. Every time I watch Goldblum, I always just think of Goldblum. Like the only character he will ever be is Jeff Goldblum. Yeah,
is Jeff Goldblum. Yeah, I saw a thing recently. It says Jurassic Park did not have like it had other creatures outside of the Jurassic period, including namely Jeff Goldblum.
I thought you were going to say I saw a comment about preserved embryo in amber, and follow-up post was, you know what? Let's just do it. Let's do Jurassic Park.
Well, I saw a woman who posted, she said, imagine if there were dinosaurs alive on the earth right now. You'd have to be careful about going outside your house. You'd have to be, careful about going jogging at night. You'd have to be careful crossing a parking lot. And she's like, oh, wait, those are all the concerns I already have.
I was waiting for the punchline to be that. It felt like a...
Yep.
Yeah.
You saw it coming. You saw it coming from the outset. I'm sure you did. I did too.
Would you choose the velociraptor or the man if you felt...
Oh, maybe the man.
I don't know.
Because
the raptor might make it quick.
Not according to Dr. Grant. Your guts will spill out.
But then again, according to Grant, well, I was going to say we didn't know for sure how they looked, but I seemed to vaguely recall a line talking about possible feathers, because that was around the same time that we started talking about it from an actual archaeology standpoint.
Yeah. Well, I think somebody took the scene at the end of Jurassic Park with where the Velociraptor's about to attack. It was I guess it was the four of them. It was Grant and Sadler?
Yes.
Lex and Tim, and that scene right before the Tyrannosaurus Rex comes in and chomps on one of them. It shows them, and they're like covered in feathers, and they're just slightly less scary on screen, but it's probably more accurate. I saw a reference to Nedry's Jeep when he gets it stuck on the way to the East Dock. It was great. It was like, if that boy had a 4-inch lift and some 40s on that thing, he wouldn't have even needed the winch. I think probably locking hubs. He probably needed locking hubs as well.
It does kind of beg the question of why there weren't more robust vehicles on the island in general. Like you would have thought, just from a basic getting around planning perspective, it would be better than what they had.
I don't think anyone was expecting the dinosaurs to get out of their paddocks.
Well, I'm sure not. But there was nothing about the terrain that seemed to indicate that it was terraformed in a way. I mean, I guess if you were relying on not having to drive into an enclosure at any point, then you could make the case that what they had was fine. But if you had even the slightest inkling that you might have to drive across random terrain in an enclosure, and I'm not necessarily even talking about like the T-Rex, just any of the enclosures, then you would think you would have pretty stout vehicles to be able to manage it.
Maybe they did. It's like,
because in fairness, we really don't know what else they had. We saw the amusement ride vehicles, right, and then the basic Jeep.
Yeah, and they both had good they had both had good all-terrain tires, but they were stock size. Maybe the Explorer, the amusement ride was the Ford Explorer, and maybe it had slightly bigger, but none of them had not so much that you would need a lift to like and have to do any sort of modifications to the fenders or the wheel wells or anything like that. So, and you can we can confidently say in the early 90s, people were not doing a lot of, or the community that did a lot of modifications for off-road driving was much, much smaller. We were all kids watching Jurassic Park, and we grew up, and we were like, hey, we need bigger tires.
We heeded the warning. That's what you're saying.
Yes. We saw what could happen. Yeah, like I said, locking diffs, 40s, and, a 4-inch lift, and Nedry would never have gotten out of the Jeep. It's like the anti-plot line.
Yeah, fair. There does need to be a word for that, too, I guess.
Yeah. I was going to say, back to our original topic, I also thought, like, there's this movie that I like. It was a Roman Polanski movie, but I have watched it. Like, I watched it before I knew that it was a Polanski movie. I found out that it was directed by Roman Polanski at the end when I saw it directed by Roman Polanski, and I was like, oh, whoops. But I remember it's Ghost Rider. The Ghost Rider. Have you seen that with Ewan McGregor?
I don't think so.
It was Ewan McGregor and the fourth Bond, the one right before Craig. I'm blanking on his name. After Dalton, before Craig.
Brosnan?
Thank you. Yes, Pierce Brosnan. That's a good movie. Like I recommend that you watch it after Roman Polanski dies. But yeah, I just remember watching it. I was like, this is oddly. It takes place in the United States, and I was like, but there's something odd about it. It's like there were obviously like a Dodge Ram. There were obvious American vehicles in here, but somehow they didn't fit. It was an interesting watch, and yeah, so they specifically chose American vehicles so that it would look like they were in the United States, even though they recorded the movie in Europe. Because Roman Polanski will get arrested if he comes to the United States.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I understand horrible things did happen to him in his life, but it's no excuse. Two things can be true at once. You can have horrible things happen to you, and you can also be a horrible human being.
Yeah, there are many examples of that throughout history.
For sure. And I feel like recently Quentin Tarantino, he did a similar thing where it's just like, man, I think he spoke. He's just kind of it was just had sort of like an asshole rant towards an actor, and there was like, I don't know that there was any purpose for it. Kind of similar to how Christian Bale yelled at and that one seems a little more understandable. Like if somebody just if you've been working for 12 hours and somebody keeps messing up and you having to keep redo the same thing, like I can it doesn't make it okay, but I can understand I guess there's a little more grace for that kind of outburst, especially when I believe it was followed up with an explanation and an apology.
It was. I don't remember if it was immediately or if it was like the next day, but either way,
it was at least the next day.
Either way, it was something where it was very much a, I was in the wrong, and the apology kind of thing. Kind of thing. It's very much a Gen X type thing to say. But yes, I agree. It's the kind of thing that does feel similar to like the whole Rowling thing, where there are certain things that feel bad and there are certain things that just feel like wrong in the moment, but excusable. And it's just a condition of the intricacies of human behavior and emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. The one about Quentin Tarantino, he had openly criticized the actor Paul Dano, specifically his performance in There Will Be Blood, which was, I don't know, over a decade old.
Yeah, so very much a question of what purpose does it serve?
Well, I think it was an interview on a podcast, and I think that's what surrounded it, and that came out, and it was the comments was he referred to him as weak sauce and the weakest actor in SAG, and I'm curious more about the context, Not that necessarily makes it better, but it's like, how did they get there? And it's okay. It's okay to be critical, but a lot of people came to Dano's defense, and it's just, I think I think the problem maybe not that he was critical of his performance in the movie, but rather the words he used to critique him, calling him the weakest actor in SAG. Somebody has to be the weakest actor in SAG, and it's probably, there's only one of those people. Only one can be the weakest. But what's the benefit of pointing that out? Other than, it wasn't constructive. I think that's what it is. It was punching down, and it wasn't constructive. And I think that's why that's why it has a bad look. And that's something where it's like, I'm not necessarily going to not watch his things over, but I'm just like, am I surprised that he's an asshole? Or was this just this just all came out, wrong? And
yeah, I mean, it sounds more personal than it just came out wrong because of the choice of words. And I think that's why it feels, I mean, I like the way of saying both punching down and not constructive, because it matches, but I think the tone also matches more of a personal attack than it does an objective thought, or whether objective or not, even a biased thought, something rooted in performance and not, an attack. And I think it's the kind of thing that makes it a lot easier to look at and say it's wrong, as opposed to like Christian Bale's outburst.
Yeah, I think that if Tarantino wanted to actually say something helpful, I think he could have criticized his performance and pointed out the things that he would have directed differently. Or, I don't think it's wrong to criticize. I don't think it would be wrong. I think there is a scenario where Tarantino can say, Dano's performance in this movie is not good for these reasons, and this is what I would have directed differently. I think that can exist. It's a little bit, you have to dance around it a little more. You have to be a little more, there's finesse, there's a certain amount of finesse that is needed to not come off like an asshole. So if we're going to talk about actors saying things on podcasts, I've got another one.
Go for it, because I don't have another response to Tarantino.
Okay. Recently, Vince Vaughn was on a podcast, and he was linking the demise of late night television with also with it becoming political. All of the late night shows becoming political, and I really think that's a really sophomoric take on what's happening with late shows. Yeah, they're in decline because watching TV, broadcast TV, rather than streaming is just not it's declining everywhere, we should say, and especially when you can get those shows on a streaming service as well. But I don't think that's at all. I don't think the politics is at all the problem with late night TV. I actually think that the reason politics is even at all in late night TV is because politicians have turned politics into pop culture, and traditional news hasn't held the line the way that it should have. And I think we've talked about this. I mean, I think that we talked about this even before this podcast was formed, about how we're now relying on comedians to provide the truth in news. And so I don't it just feels like Vaughn is just like, it feels like he just it's kind of like when people say, like, I'm not into politics. It's like, well, that's because you're currently exhibiting your privilege to not have to talk about politics. That's how it comes across to me.
Yeah, I think I would agree. If you go back and look at late late night shows in general, they've never been apolitical. They may not have been as focused on political commentary as eventually they became, but they've always had a political undercurrent. Most of the time, it was something that was a little more nuanced, a little more subtle, but it was still present.
I don't think Jay Leno was ever nuanced or subtle.
I didn't say they all were.
No, that's fair.
I've just said that it's never been apolitical.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's never been apolitical, but it's certainly not the way that it is now. Like, it's very, and again, our traditional media, was supposed to be the fourth estate. It was the unofficial fourth estate of the U.S. government, and it's been more or less bought and paid for.
Yeah, I mean, it no longer exists in any meaningful fashion to check power. It's probably the simplest way to summarize it. Like, everything, there's a reason I don't pay attention to traditional media anymore, for the most part. It's not worth it, because I get more factual sources from investigating things that I hear within the vein of comedy than I do actual mainstream news organizations.
Right. Comedy, the humor is just the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down.
Yeah. I certainly learn far more from someone like John Oliver than I do from any news anchor.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I don't get to, investigate certain pieces the way I would like. I have to just rely on what his team decides to focus on. But still, it's factual and hard-hitting, and that's exactly what journalistic media is supposed to be.
Yeah, I think Dan Rather and Tom Brokaw were a couple of the last evening news anchors that you might have gotten something like that from. But, I've got to imagine that Dan Rather was like fighting his editor, who was getting phone calls from the whatever floor of whatever building they were in, or wherever the owner of, I don't remember who owns CBS. In my head, I keep thinking of General Electric and owning NBC, and that was Tom Brokaw. So, but I'm sure that happened. I mean, we saw, I think they depicted that in Good Night and Good Luck, and it was the movie that was it was Edward R. Murrow. So, I mean, it's been happening always, because nobody at the opportunity that we had to protect media, we did not, and therefore media has been bought and sold, or mainstream media has been bought and sold. That, I don't think that doesn't mean that all of it's bad. I think you find nuggets of truth here and there, because I do think there are some people that have journalistic integrity, but it's just few and far between. And it seems like that the comedians have, looked to George Carlin, who was ahead of his time, and seen and saw, whether or not they knew or not, I can make the comparison that they are following in his footsteps.
I would agree, and I think it's important to also point out, just for the sake of completeness and view, I've always also maintained that wherever you choose to get your news from, you should run periodic tests on a subject that you know well, and evaluate how they report on that subject, and use that as a baseline to figure out how well their reporting on any other subject might be. Basic.
I believe I've heard you say that before.
And it's just basic assessment or basic objective understanding of the sources you choose to embrace for getting information. So whether it's a mainstream news site or a non-mainstream news site, again, should be factual analysis, not agreement with opinion, but a subject that you know well, compare their reporting on that subject, and you should have at least an idea of how they approach journalistic integrity across the board.
And editorials and entertainment should be labeled explicitly.
Yes. That would go a long way to
it really
alleviating some of the problem. Very, very clear labels, like you have to do for satirical pieces.
Yes. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.
Did a thing. A few weeks ago, it was after you you told me that you got a Unified travel router. I was like, I found the Unify Store app because I had some alerts set up, and I never got them in time, and so I just downloaded the app, and whenever I saw the app, I like, I'll search it and in the recently viewed, and I end up getting one today, or ordered one today. Yeah, it's now sold out again.
Seems to be a fairly consistent problem. There's been discussion on different social media channels about how to combat scalpers, because essentially what's happening is they're being purchased and then resold at markup because of limited availability.
Oh God, they're if you look on Amazon, they're like something like $200.
I still haven't had an actual use for the travel router, meaning that I just haven't used it for its intended purpose, but I have used it a couple of times to connect to the home network just to see ease of use. So I could have very well not used it, but I've tested it at least and liked what I've had. So I don't know. We'll see what happens over time.
Yeah, I mean, I expect you'll probably head up to Indiana or take a end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, it will serve. Yeah, it'll serve us well at least a couple of times a year at a minimum. But I expect it will be more frequent than that at some point. It's just a matter of when.
I've got a trip at the end of April that I expect to I hope it doesn't take too. I don't know. Do you remember the turnaround time for shipping?
I've never had anything take very long from Ubiquity.
Yeah,
most of the time, like 48 hours, and it's in my hand.
Oh wow! Yeah. Okay, so I'll have plenty of time to test this out before my trip.
Yeah, I would be surprised if it took more than a week. I don't remember what they shipped the travel router as. That was the only thing I ordered when I ordered it. But I don't remember that. I don't remember the speed being as quick as everything else I order. But everything else I order is a higher ticket item. So
yeah.
But even when I've ordered cables in general, granted, I've ordered them in bulk, so the dollar amount gets high enough that maybe they went, with expedited shipping or a higher tier shipping than they would have otherwise. But even when it's just been cables, it's been quick. So yeah, a week would be strange. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's plenty of time. I was kind of thinking I think yesterday or the day before, I was like, I hope that they come in, or I hope I can get one before that trip.
Yeah, I think that was the one that I didn't get the shipment notification until it was already most of the way here.
Yes, you did. I do remember you saying that.
I order from them often enough in general. I normally don't worry too much about tracking stuff from them.